I have to restart. Forgot to record this. So welcome to the 112 Airhacks TV. And Alex asked me, is it a good idea to have producers and consumers as method parameters? And what it is, I think he means, the JWT function producer and consumer, like the I think you mean this, right? So I wouldn't say it is like command pattern, right? So if you put something to the method, you can implement a callback with that, but it is a very generic way of structuring parameters. I would say it is always better idea to have a more, how to call it, more readable parameters, but with producers and consumers you can compose, and I'm actually not sure, is it called producer? Supplier, I think, right? This is supplier, and the producer, supplier is the producer, and consumer, I think, is consumer, right? So so you can have supplier, which is a factory, and consumer is the counterpart of the factory. Consumer could be, for instance, logger. It consumes log events, and for instance, I implemented a logger with it once, so you can have a logger which consumes events, and so. Because suppliers and consumers are SAM's single abstract method, what you can do is you can assign any method you like to it. So I would say the general use case is if there is a parameter or return value, a supplier or consumer. So what you can do outside, you can, for instance, what would be supplier? I think a callable, right? Callable could be a supplier of something, and so you can assign a method, for instance, return value, to a supplier or consumer, and pass it to a method. So I would say usually it is not a good idea. If you would like to compose, chain methods together, it might be a good idea, but it's not like a general advice. So it's 6 in the morning and 70 degrees Celsius. It's not bad, Alex. Okay. Now Rana asked me, I've been learning about Java for 3 months. Tell me why there aren't junior level Java jobs. So I get sometimes from companies question now about junior developers. There should be more young Java programmers. What we have the Discord chat. This is exactly this. So, and what I created at the Discord chat, Discord server, not chat, a job channel, and there was I think one recruiter already asked for Java developers, and one company. So maybe you will find that there are job. So if you like join the Discord, there is a jobs channel, and if someone searches for jobs, I redirect there. So are we violating solid principles by using suppliers, producers using as a method parameters? Alex, from my opinion, it is not, for me, it's not a problem to violate a principle if the resulting code is easy to understand, right? So sometimes we have to violate principles, otherwise we will write lots of boilerplate code. So I would say it is absolutely okay to violate a principle and watch what happens and continuously improve the code base. Absolutely fine. I think it's better, to produce perfect code with lots of interaction and everything is perfectly separated and complex. So I would say simplicity over principles. This is my take on it. And just write simple code which and measure and test it frequently. So how to become expert Java Spring Boot? Got a question. I have no idea about Spring Boot, so I cannot tell you how to become an expert in Spring Boot. What I can tell you is Quarkus is easier to become knowledgeable in Quarkus, because Quarkus is based on application servers, which are also, there are lots of Quarkus experts, right? So, but how to become good in Java, I would say, just enjoy it and, write Java code, and you become, good in it. But if you would like to have a job, you will also have to, you know, to promote yourself and sell your services. So this is also important. Otherwise, you know, if you are good and no one knows about that, you will never get a job, right? So now the first question here is from Ulrich. This is a friend of the show, and I think I know Ulrich from a project even, and a project I'm not sure, but from Airhacks and Munich Airport. And thank you, Ulrich, for buying my microservices course. And he says, okay, what I use managed executor service in combination with suspended. So I didn't watch my own courses training, but what I did, I guess, I had an JAX-RS endpoint, which is void, and suspended async response as a parameter. So what happens then is you can call the function, the method, without blocking blocking the main thread, and it suspends and then waits for execution. It's almost reactive programming. And what happens then, of course, because it is an asynchronous call, you are losing request scope. So request scope doesn't work anymore. And what happens then, of course, you cannot inject JSON Web Token principal and so forth, because you will lose, you know, the injection just doesn't work. And the question is what you can do. Unfortunately, what you will have to do is you will have to, what I will do, for instance, in Java 17, I would create a Java record, let's call it context, and put whatever you need, JSON Web Token principal and HTTP server request to it, and pass it, you know, to the managed executor service. This would be, from my perspective, a way better than use activate request context, which might work but is less known by the developers. So it is my solution is not elegant, but it's simple. So this I would suggest. So I don't know whether suspended and async response is still a good idea in you know, in a few months, because we get Project Loom. And with Project Loom, it should be fine, you know, just to write simple code, and the Project Loom will you know, care about the how to call it, scalability. So what Project Loom is a virtual threads, and you will be able to have, you know, millions of virtual threads, yeah, it should scale well. Now there is a project Helidon called. And Helidon Nima, you have to search for N-I-M-A, project Nima, let's see, Helidon Nima. And the Nima thing is, yeah, Helidon Nima is right now a Loom implementation, Loom thread, virtual thread implementation for Helidon. A Helidon is a micro profile server, very similar to Quarkus. I think segregation of principle. I'm not sure whether it violates the principle. Hard to tell, Alex. Sometimes I did it with the, you know, with the suppliers and consumers. Because producers are in CDI and suppliers in Java SE. This is why I'm confused, right? So. So now the question is, oh, you can path certificate exam from Oracle and become whoever you want. Alex, you're right. So the passing exams or certificate is actually a good idea to promote yourself. So the more certificates you have under your belt, desto better it looks, right? So this is always a good idea. So, what do you think about OpenLiberty instant on feature? I think what you mean is I guess this the CraC implementation of OpenLiberty. I think OpenLiberty was always small and nimble, and actually they were able, you know, a few years ago even, to serialize the entire state and deserialize on different nodes. So OpenLiberty was actually written for the cloud from the beginning, so it is a very fast and small application server. So I like OpenLiberty actually. So I think on the instant feature you mean CraC, C-R-A-C. I hope OpenLiberty instant, on, right? And is it based on CraC? Hopefully it is. CraC. It is not, but it should be. What I thought what it is there's a CraC. I'll show you what it is. OpenJDK. CraC stands for hard to me. There's a coordinated restore at checkpoint. So, and this is okay. And we have the friend of the show Tiago Lino, which re-watches all the episodes. So thank you, Tiago, for that. And now it's almost caught up. And yeah, welcome back, Tiago. And so now, we have the Liberty instant on, and we have to investigate. I think FastJVM with OpenJDK CRIU. I hope this is this CraC feature of OpenJDK. I'm pretty sure. Let's see, CraC. Yes, it is fastest level with checkpoint and restore. It seems like CraC, but for unknown reasons they don't call it CraC. So yeah, this is also what I also use on Lambdas. So this is actually a good idea, and yeah, great idea actually. So I think we covered that. Recently on the Discord server, I got this question, and what it is I got the question, you know, I would like to deploy my Angular application automatically to AWS Lambda, and this caused some discussion on the airhacks Discord server, and so I get it from time to time, even in projects. So AWS Lambda was not designed to be an HTTP server. It's way too expensive, too slow. It is more, so there are actually two AWS Lambdas, right? The one, it serves like an HTTP, you can use as an HTTP gateway. So it is a little bit misuse of the event idea, but it works great. So you can, let's say, ship Quarkus or Micronaut as AWS Lambda, and it responds to HTTP requests. And you can write, you know, a stock JAX-RS code and write API endpoints. And the Lambda is called and answers. So the first call is usually 1.5 seconds, and all subsequent calls are way faster. So if you measure, you know, a Quarkus with microprofile as Lambda, it responds in 7 to 10 milliseconds and after response. Of course, from outside a little bit slower, but if this is what you will pay for, you know, the build duration is 6 to 10 milliseconds from outside. The entire round trip depends on your network, of course. So, and the question was, you know, what I answered is, it is actually a bad idea to use HTTP, AWS Lambdas and HTTP web server. So what you should do instead, use S3 bucket as a website with CloudFront and DNS certificate. Is way cheaper and scales better. A Lambda is more suitable to serve HTTP API requests, REST requests. Okay, this is better. Now it's fun. So our time machine. So this is, what is time machine? 100 episodes back. Now we go back to episode number 12, and this is, which year is it? 2015. But which month? This was February of 2015. And let's see the questions. So HTTP session replication and clustering discussion. So so this is less, right? Because I think HTTP session is almost dead in application. So we try to be stateless. Why? Because it is also a problem with application load balancers. So you have to configure them. So what usually happens is we store the session data in the database S3 bucket, DynamoDB, Elasticache, or in memory on premise, right? And now this second one is more interesting. So I would say HTTP session replication and clustering. We could do this. For instance, still you can use Payara and use, for instance, this not EH cache rather than also not Infinispan. So in Wildflow would be Infinispan. Hazelcast is in Payara. So you can distribute the session using Hazelcast, for instance. But usually, session is not a good idea. I mean, it works fine. But if you go to cloud native, you have to configure, you know, session affinity, sticky sessions, which is a little bit more challenging the stateless application. So that's all. So now the question about SOAP, and it says, okay, I have a question for you. You may even queue up for an upcoming string, but I'm really curious. You stated that SOAP could even remove it from the API. Yes, and it said, okay, but why? SOAP is actually fine. And the interesting part is SOAP is somehow similar to GraphQL, right? It's also one endpoint post. What you get back is a JSON, but there is also a schema. So I would say SOAP is not that dissimilar to GraphQL, and it has its place, right? So I would say GraphQL you could use, you know, if you would like to centralize the API calls, is interesting. But I would say I didn't saw, you know, a SOAP is definitely no more. Also, I don't know about any new project which uses SOAP. So I would say, therefore, I would say it is that. Of course, there are legacy projects which are using SOAP, but I don't think you would start on a fresh project with SOAP, right? So this 2 EJB modules, I think times are over. We have for years just a war, right? And in that side of wars, the EJBs can just communicate. That's interesting. The point number 4, what is the most effective, elegant way of implementing single table multi-tenancy? And why it's interesting? Because recently I did the single table design with DynamoDB. This is interesting because this is even more than this. So what's fun is back then, you know, people say, okay, we can put the entire object hierarchy to a single table, and the question was, you know, do we violate a principle with it? And what happens? The single table design on NoSQL, like MongoDB or DynamoDB, right now became an absolute best practice. So so you know what was somehow, you know, problematic back then became, you know, best practice right now. Similar question, or this is follow up actually. So this was a mistake back then. Okay, this is follow up. So do we need to propagate the security context to EJBs using form-based authentication? So I think we can skip that because EJBs are no more that popular. And what is the replacement of EJBs? I use request scoped and transactional CDIs. It's very similar behavior. And by the way, EJBs are not very popular, but I still use EJBs to explain AWS Lambda. So it's almost the same principles. Okay, JSP, also less interesting. Why? Because what's changed maybe? Back then, we used the security of application servers. And what happened in the last few years, this security moved out of the application servers to the cloud usually. HTTP API gateway, so we get the token from outside. The token is injected with microprofile JWT, and we use the data from the token. And how the token is provided, yeah, by HTTP API gateway, by OpenID Connect Flow, by for instance, application load balancer or HTTP API gateway, or on premise by Keycloak, for instance. Also fun, single timer event. So it's still up-to-date question because I get a question all the time, you know, how to deal with timers in cluster or in the cloud. And we don't use schedulers anymore in the cloud. What usually happens, we try to have a timer outside of the application. For instance, is this event bridge timer on AWS. And you can use cron expression, for instance, or cron expressions, and the other is how it's called, schedules, I think. So you can periodically invoke something, right? So and the idea is the scheduler happens once per, I think, region or availability zone. I think no, per region, per account and region. So you can set it up because, you know, the event bridge is a regional resource. And therefore, if you know your cluster is invoked once, and let's say you call via the load balancer, you know, your containers, only one event is triggered. And if you call Lambda, is also only one Lambda triggered, right? So what about Gradle? So funny thing is, if you watch my shorts, if you go to short about the JCon, there was on the Gradle booth, I saw, you know, and like a, how to call it, like a neon sign Like Gradle loves Maven, so never-ending story. And I still use Maven everywhere, so there was no change. I use because Maven is for me simpler and faster, and I don't need power of Gradle, so my build scripts are very simple, and my pipelines are a little bit more complicated. So that's the difference. So Java 8 in exception handling still problematic because you cannot throw unchecked checked exceptions. You only have to throw unchecked exception is still ugly, so no change there. I've added beans XML, but I read somewhere we don't need it in Java 7. This error is gone even if the file is empty. Yeah, if you have an empty beans XML file, it activates the the module, and you can have a beans XML with a single bean. So still true now right now. Can we set a schedule time from properties so we don't need to recompile the changing time? No, and it's actually a bad idea. So what we did, actually, I got questions today when they asked me, no, we would like to change the environment entry in running system. How to do that? I said it's really bad idea, because even if you change environment entries, and let's say you have four cluster nodes, you will have to change everything at the same time. Otherwise, you get inconsistent behavior. So it is way better to have a CI/CD solution and move forward. And even an environment change, what I will do on AWS with CDK, on Azure with Bicep, I would change the environment entry, move forward, and redeploy all the pods or lambdas, for instance. So I get now a question from the chat, which has priority. What do you think in the best way to dynamic data model mapping in Quarkus? DB model editable at runtime. So right now in a project, we have the problem that the API is, I would say, has many shapes. It is fluent, and we use JSON-P, and the data is stored, let's say, in S3. So the data can be changed at the runtime at any time, and we write more tests. So this is working. So Mr. For Java, I only use Gradle for some Kotlin-specific projects where Maven is not supported, but for Java general project, I use Maven to keep it simple. Very good for Java. It's also my opinion. Perfect. This is similar. Ravi and Valsa Raj have similar questions. Can we get schedule configuration details from properties files? I think it is possible. Scheduler. I think schedule in Quarkus it is possible for. In Quarkus, the annotation is called scheduled, and this is possible. You can override it with property files. Okay, and John Hogan is actually a friend of the show, still on Twitter, and even attended recently the airhacks workshops. And he asked, and this is interesting because someone accused me on Twitter that back then, I was pro microservices, which I actually cannot remember. Or he says, okay, I believe I remember you saying that being monolithic is your friend. Still my opinion. So I survive, microservices. So microservices for specific cases are the solution to specific problems. But usually what I like are small and nimble monolith, since at least 2015. So we documented this here. So John, thank you. And can the ideas of monolithic is your friend and microservice still peacefully coexist in your mind? Absolutely. So actually, the proof of that is Adam Bean, AWS, Block, Lambda, Coreto. If we search for that, Coreto, you should find an article. Exactly. Where I actually described how to create a fed lambdas. It is an older article on Quarkus. And what I do in projects, we actually ship lambdas with lots of classes, Java classes, and it works great. So I mean, you have one function zip, you deploy everything at once, takes 2 minutes, and you have the transactional deployment. You deploy the lambda once, and it is working for specific applications. And if you have more than that, we have like facade lambdas and asynchronous lambdas in background working for us. And so I would say what I like to do is to have monolithic applications which are really well structured inside, and you can always tear them apart if there is a need. Okay, so we have that. This was the article on AWS blog. Helidon Nima. Oh, forgot that. So there were. Thank you for attending, by the way, this summer edition of airhacks Live. And yeah, it is going to be busy summer and autumn. So the next airhacks Live workshops are going to be in December. And two new topics. One is AWS security authentication and authorization. For instance, JSON Web Token authentication, authorization, OpenID Connect flow with application load balancer, HTTP API gateways, Lambda, Fargate, stuff like that. So IAM roles and everything around security. Everything with Java and CDK, and serverless Java patterns about, for instance, Monolith and how to build, you know, monolithic serverless application productively, right? So podcasts. Actually, I forgot to publish a podcast for this week, but I will do it tomorrow. I completely forgot about that. So I have only to publish this. Yeah, the last podcast from last week was with Rafael Del Nero about Java challenges, a great one, and also with Shai Almog about debugging. He wrote this debug agent from the Twitter with great book. So you will have to buy the book, of course. Now, where are we? Yeah, REST is stateless. Okay, no session, nothing. Yeah, this is maybe true. Also, I mean, should be, I would say, this is already truth right now, right? So I would say the HTTP sessions are gone. Stateful session beans are also gone. I would say session scoped even is not that common, right? Yeah. And the credentials also gone. Why? Because we have JSON Web Token. So, yeah, tokens, JSON Web Tokens, exactly. And how would you maintain transactions over several REST API calls? And the answer is you won't. So the idea is if you will have to do it, you will have to implement, you know, two-phase commit, which is not a great idea. So what you will do is, you know, you will call back and forth the REST APIs, and if something fails, you will have to know this is Zaga pattern, have compensative transaction and roll everything back. Okay. And this basic, how would you structure your web application to keep one code base for several customers, each with their own customization? Interesting, because recently we had a chat about that. So how to do that? So one possibility is, for instance, you have a jar core, which is common for everyone. And in microservices Quarkus, you can wrap this jar core with multiple JAX-RS endpoints. So you can ship, you know, multiple microservices, one per customer. And I prefer this, even if the code is a little bit copied, over multi-tenancy, because if you do this, you have isolated, you know, siloed microservices. So it's better for scalability, for monitoring, for security. So this was the easiest one. So you have a common jar, and you've wrapped the common jar with, you know, with the extensions. Of course, you can do, you know, you can implement plugins. You can use Java 9 modules even. You can have service. Is it called not service locator? I forgot the name. Where service in Manifest MF, you can register services for an interface. You can load implementation, and this is called service loader. I'm pretty sure it is service loader. Wait a second. Service loader Java. Exactly. Not locator, service loader. And you could use service loader, for instance, to implement extensions. By the way, service loader is also would be a great topic for the next short, or one of the next shorts. First Java says the J session generated per default on JSPs to disable just do exactly. Interesting for Java that you're still using JSPs. And I would say JSPs is actually forgotten technology, great but forgotten technologies, because JSPs are great for templating and they are very fast. So interesting. So now I think we covered everything. So we have this, and we covered the entire time machine. So we are in the half of time usually. So I would say thank you for a lot for watching and listening. See you on Discord. If you like, join the Discord. And Yeah, enjoy airhacks FM podcast, and see you at upcoming conferences. Fertis asked me, hello, are you a backend Java developer? Yes, I think I am a backend Java developer and front-end web component JavaScript developer. But right now I do a lot with Java and also in the clouds. And Fertis, I really like Java. Okay, on that note, thank you a lot. Greetings to Kamchatka and wherever. And see you next month with the 113th edition of the show. Thank you and bye.